The Great Gospel of John, revealed from the Lord through the inner word to Jakob Lorber. Volume 8, Chapter 69 to 75. Jesus elucidates the history of the earth. When will science finally recognize the Lord as creator? Chapter 69. The Roman Markus asks about the history of the earth. The Lord says, "When we were sitting very quietly and cheerfully together, the Roman Markus, who we already came to know as a deep thinker, said, 'Lord and Master, do you allow me, now that we have the opportunity for it, to ask you still another question? There is still something bothering me, and I gladly would like to receive some explanation about it, more than what you have given us on the Mount of Olives.' I said, 'You just can always speak and ask as you wish, for within you lives a soul of light. Although I know what you still want to ask, but for the sake of the others, I like you to speak and ask, so that also they will know what it is all about. For it is always a big mistake with people when only a few perceive in themselves what they are lacking. If people would notice and feel this, then they also would search for it with great diligence and zeal and try to find it, and they also would find many things. But because they are lazy and do not know and feel what they are lacking, they are also not searching what is lacking and do not find it. However, the one who searches will find, to the one who asks will be given, and for the one who knocks will be opened up. Thus, just say about which you still want to have a clearer light than what was given to you on the Mount of Olives." Now our Roman Markus said, "Look, Lord and Master, you yourself have explicitly said that man cannot love God completely above all if he will not try to know him, as far as this is possible to him. And then, after that, I thought about it for a long time. I discovered that I am still lacking a lot. Look, in Illyria and also in our faraway regions, I possess several mines, and from these I attain all kinds of metals, like gold, silver, lead, and a great quantity of iron, of which we can make very good use. But by digging into such a mine in the mountains, I have already found very rare and remarkable things, and this was very deep under the usual surface of the earth. These were bones and skeletons of gigantic animals that one time lived on the earth. When did they live on the earth, and how could they end up so deep under, let us say, such high mountains? So also, they have even found bones and skeletons in Egypt and Spain that had a great resemblance with those of a man. Only they certainly were 4 to 5 times as big and strong as those of a man now. And so I also have found many remarkable things, of which I do not find it necessary here to name more in detail. Although, on the mountain, you have told us briefly that before Adam, there was a kind of people that existed for a long time, who still had little free will, but who lived just like the animals, more instinctively, and also acted according to that instinct. Only about 4,000 years ago, according to the scripture of the Jews, appears the first man, Adam, with a complete free will and with an equally free reason, and giving from himself wise laws and regulations to his descendants. I would like to ask now an important question, and that is, was this earth during the time of Adam here and there still inhabited by those earlier men? And does that generation continue to exist, perhaps somewhere on certain places on the earth, up to our time? And will they perhaps still continue to exist for a longer time? And how did those remains of bones of the prehistoric animals end up even under the foundations of the mountains, just like the gigantic remains of the pre-adamites? Lord, please give me still some further explanation about this, for what we, searching Romans, have discovered until now, that, and certainly still more than that, will be discovered by our descendants. The books of Moses that are known to us do not give us an answer at all about the conditions of life on earth before Adam. Moses begins immediately with the extremely mysterious story of creation, which, however, is in no way connected with what we are discovering now on the earth. it only brings forward great contradictions. If you will not give us a higher light about this now, it will cause great confusion, namely with the later descendants, and your teaching will be hit by great divisions, for your teaching is based on that of Moses. When he, however, is obscure in this respect, then your light cannot come to full clarity. Therefore, give us also in this respect still a clearer explanation. We please ask you for this. Chapter 70, about the natural scientific content of the 6th and 7th book of Moses, the age of the earth. I said, "Listen, my Markus, who have become very lovable to me. I have told and shown you already many things, and I will tell and show you also that, but all what I have said and told you now will not go further than your first generation, because the worldly people will not grasp it, will not understand it, and will therefore also not believe it. You have brought forward a very good reason why your desired explanation about things and life circumstances of this earth seem to be especially necessary to make the people believe more firmly in my teaching. But I also have told you that the spirit of all things which is present in my creation will reveal it to all those who will be reborn in the spirit. The one to whom the Spirit will reveal it will then also really understand in the true light about the things which are now still incomprehensible to you. You surely will accept from me what I will now say about it by word of mouth, because I tell you so, but the full depth of it you will not understand, and you will even less be capable to give an exact idea to other people who are now still completely blind in spirit. And therefore, the people will still have to wait a long time until they can be given an answer to all so-called important questions in such a way that they can understand it. Look, the Jews were once the most enlightened people on earth, apart from the fact that Moses himself has explained everything through the mouth of his brother Aaron in 2 books that were added later. Now it has already come that far with them that they know or understand absolutely nothing anymore of such prehistoric matters. All such remnants that they find, they call it the result of the deluge of Noah, which they do not understand anymore. And if you will teach them anything else, they will curse you as a heretic. You Gentiles have in your mythology a myth of actually 2 great deluges of the earth. And they attribute to it in the first place the cause of the remnants, and the people believes it firmly. If you will tell the people the truth now, they will laugh at you, and at best they will say, "Ah, who can know that? Only the gods know. Then what can you answer them?" Look, that is why the people will only be capable to grasp these kind of truths when they firstly be skilled in all kinds of science, and secondly when their awakened spirit will reveal it to them. But to you, I surely want to give some indications about how these things are, although I know all too well that with your present ability of understanding, you will not be able to grasp all of it. In the first place, because you are lacking the concept of extremely big numbers, and in the second place, because you only know and believe what I have told you about the magnitude, the distance, and the movements of the stars. But also this remains for you only external knowledge, until it will take form in your spirit as an independent and self-created lightened truth. The fact that this earth has such a high age that you would not be able to grasp the number of years, even if I would tell you, I've shown you already on the Mount of Olives. But to make it short, as a celestial body, the earth exists for your concepts already almost for an endlessly long time, and had to endure many changes on its surface until it adopted its present-day form. Fire, water, earthquakes and other great storms, especially in its beginning, were the helpers that, according to my will, made it what it has become now. And in order that it may continue to exist and will become still more suitable for the temporary nourishment of still a lot more people and other creatures, fire, floods, earthquakes and little and great storms must continue upon and above it whenever it is necessary. Chapter 71. The first 2 periods of development of the earth. when the earth in its beginning was only that much developed that above its waters only a few bigger and smaller islands were beginning to rise up, which were covered with the mud of the sea, I soon, from my wisdom and my will, placed all kinds of seeds of plants in the fertile mud. And look, then such islands became then also soon overgrown, first with all kinds of rare grass, herbs, and with small and later also extremely big trees. When those islands were overgrown, I then put also eggs or seeds in it for the formation of an animal world that was suitable for the earth in that condition, which first only existed of all kinds of little and later bigger worms, and then of insects, and finally, when the dried soil contained already food in abundance, also of gigantic animals. Their task was to feed themselves with the still very coarse herbs and branches of the trees, and to fertilize the soil more and more with their manure, and finally also with their deceased gigantic bodies, of which the bones are still remnants that can be found in the deep holes and shafts of the earth. From the decay of such animals developed, according to my will, again a large number of new animals in the form of smaller and bigger worms, and from that again in the form of all kinds of insects. Let us call this now a separate period of development of the earth. But it is of course obvious that before that, the earthly body underwent already numberless times all kinds of changes, because this condition could never be possible without those processes. But all such events are as little your concern as, for instance, those of a grain of wheat that has been put into the soil until the moment when finally a very useful, completely ripe and blessed fruit will come out of the seed. In short, now I have shown you the earth in its first period of fertilization and blossom, in which all kinds of seeds for herbs and trees were put in the upper layer of its soil, and eggs for all kinds of animals. And for all that, the foundation was laid in the water already a long time ago, because certain and very diverse water plants and water animals are in every respect clearly a lot older than the animals of the continent and the animals of the sky. Through my words, you have now seen the first formation of a fertile soil, and by that you had to imagine that for better animals, and even less for human beings, there was no possibility to exist on this early fertile soil. But this sour condition was nevertheless necessary, for without this condition, no second and more perfect one could follow. No more than when a riper and finally completely ripe fruit on a tree can never come out without the preceding meager sour bud. But for the ripening of a fruit on a tree, there are, after the formation of the meager sour bud, certainly still a number of stages of development needed, which of course only my eye can detect with precision, and this is also absolutely necessary for the ripening process of a celestial body. Now we have seen the development of the earth unto the stage of a meager sour bud. What is exactly happening with the tree in the early springtime when the meager sour bud swells up completely and becomes green and juicy? Look, it bursts open, urged from the inside, throws away its covering, so to speak, overboard into the sea of transition and dissolution, and deploys itself to a greater perfection, so that then, from its center, the leaves can unfold and necessary companions of the next blossom, leading to the development of the fruit. Even if a tree, as already observed, is only a meager comparison for the development of a celestial body, it still can give you a good image from which you, in a very simplified form, can deduce how much is needed before a celestial body becomes suitable to carry and to feed people of your kind. This first period of the first stage of the still coarse and uncultivated manner to fertilize the earth comes to an end after many thousands of years, as they are now calculated on earth. For at that time, no specific seasons existed for this earth, and those that existed already lasted a little longer than those of now. This first period, which we have seen, perished by storms of fire from the interior of the earth that were allowed, or rather carefully determined, and after a great number of earthly years, as we know them now, bigger parts of land raised up from the depth of the seas of the earth, already provided with mountains and covered with an already very fertile mud. For my wisdom and my will, more perfect seeds were put into this mud at the right time, and soon it looked already luxuriant on the bigger parts of land and the still young earth. Now, when there was again a great amount of food on those different bigger parts of land, in the wisest order I immediately provided for a greater number of already more developed, little and big consumers. Bigger animals inhabited the water between the parts of land, and the bigger parts of land had their big animals that ate the new plants, herbs and trees that grew on the bottom. Various grasses, plants, herbs, bushes and gigantic trees still produced the seed and could reproduce, but the greatest part grew still out of the fertile soil of the parts of land, just like the mushrooms. The animals came into being in nearly the same way as the Nile crocodiles in Egypt, more precisely from eggs. They were able to live in the air as well as in the water, and could also feed themselves with water plants, and the plants of the parts of land where it still was by far not dry enough. In this progressing period of development of the earth that was in a certain way important for the fruit-bearing plant life and animal life, it could not look pleasantly dry, just as little as with the more and more unfolding buds of the tree, for if they would be dry, then this would not be good for the blossom and the following fruit. Chapter 72. The Development of the Earth until the Pre-adamites. The second prehistoric period of development lasted again, calculated in present-day earthly years, for a to you unspeakably long time. But the Earth was by far still not fit to carry warm-blooded animals, not to mention human beings, no matter how inferior they may be. Therefore, also this one perished, just like the first one, and after that, it lasted again a very long time, before there was a third preparatory period of development. Of course, between the one and the other prehistoric main period, there were also a few very stormy intermediate periods, of which in the beginning only I as creator know best the meaning, and finally also the spirit, to whom I want to reveal it. Out of the many necessary processes of development came forth a third period. Now already very big lands are rising up from the sea, driven by the inner fire of the earth. This, of course, according to my will. The vegetation becomes even more richly diverse and is still of gigantic kind. And this is the same with the animals. But also this period, which lasted also extremely long, and which we could compare in a certain way with the blossom of a tree, was just as the other two preceding periods still by far not fit to serve man as a habitation. Therefore also this one perished and buried its proceedings, just as the first and second period in the vegetables as well as in the animal sphere, but not as deep as the first one. After that, there were again a few intermediate periods, and after a long time, a fourth preliminary period of development broke out. The pieces of land became again much larger, the vegetation became also again much luxuriant, and in the water, on the already drier lands, and also in the air, it became very lively with all kinds of little as well as larger animals. There were even already warm-blooded mammals that did no more come into this world by means of eggs, but by way of natural procreation, and consequently they gave birth to living young ones, with the exception of the water animals, some large amphibians, the birds, worms and insects. This fourth prehistoric main period lasted extraordinarily long. Already then, the sun shone from time to time on the surface of the earth, and on a few trees there was already a fruit that became visible, which however you would not have found so tasteful. But for the animal world of that time, it served nevertheless as a good food. Also in this fourth prehistoric period of development, there was nothing on this earth that looked like a human being. Again, great transformations came upon the earth, and these buried for the greatest part everything what in that time you would have called a creature. And from this period you have found a lot of what is buried under the surface of the earth, but which of it was fundamentally different in many ways from the products of the first three periods, after a very long time, while there was already a greater rest and order on the earth, and still after many very big storms on the earth, we can see now a fifth period that comes along in which the earth will be prepared. Again, out of the depth of the sea, great pieces of land are rising up that joins the pieces of land which already existed from the preceding periods, and formed in this way already complete continents. In this fifth period, the most and highest mountains on earth came into existence. Their very high tops are destroyed by lightning. And then, enormous earthquakes and streams of water that come from mighty cloudbursts push them into the deep valleys and clefts of the earth. By that, extensive plains and less broad valleys and flat pieces of land are formed on which everything can grow better. With the beginning of this period, the earth is brought into a regular orbit around the sun. Day and night, and also the seasons are changing regularly, although still with all kinds of deviations, because the fluctuations of the poles of the earth are still, and still have to be, very great during this period. In this period, during which a lasting continent had already been formed, the regular cycles of ocean currents, alternating about every 14,000 years, are beginning. These currents alternately flood step by step the southern half of the earth, and then the northern half, to form fertile soil over the often extensive stony deserts. For after about 14,000 years, the sea has put so much fertile slab on the waste plains of gravel and the valleys that then, when the sea retreats again, the mud is left behind to become a more firm soil. They are extremely fertile. During this fifth period, more than 1,000 times 1,000 years were needed before all the well-situated pieces of the surface of the earth were completely suitable for a new creation of a great number of the most various plants, like grasses, herbs, bushes and trees. And furthermore, also for all kinds of animals and pre-Adamic human beings. During this period, we can already see a great variety of fruit trees and other fruit-bearing vegetation for all kinds for animals, and for the at that time prehistoric human beings. But there is still no question of agriculture, although the prehistoric human beings are using already herds of certain animals and live a rough nomad existence, have no clothing and build no houses or huts. But they build certain strong habitations and resting nests on the thick branches of the trees, just like the birds, and they make provisions of food, of which they eat something every now and then. When the supply is consumed, they go in groups hunting for food again. When it becomes real cold, because during this period also the snow appears in considerable amounts, these people travel together to warmer regions with their animals that consist of mammoths, big deer, cows, goats and sheep, and also the elephant, the rhinoceros and the unicorn. All kinds of apes and also birds belong to it. More at the end of this period comes the donkey, the camel, the horse and the pig, and these prehistoric human beings can also control these animals, for they possess so much instinctive reason that they have a say over and the named animals, and they also can use them, partly as pack animals, partly for hunting, and partly for obtaining milk and wool, with which they can well cover their nests and can make for themselves a soft place to lay down. They actually do not have a language in the manner as it is spoken now among the people, but they still have, since they are very perfected animals, certain articulated sounds, signs and gestures, and they can make themselves understand mutually to make clear what they need, and they also help one another. When someone becomes sick, usually because of old age, then he surely knows the herb that will help him, and if he cannot go and search it anymore, the others will do it for him. But starting a fire and using it, that they cannot do. If, however, they would have seen how the Adamites did it later on, they would have imitated it, because the urge to imitate prevails with them, and their intelligence with a certain measure of free will is already largely above the intelligence of an ape, no matter how perfect he may be. Thus, they also could learn to speak in our manner, but they never could invent wise words out of themselves. As human beings, however, they were gigantic and extremely strong, and they had also such strong teeth, and they could use them as cutting instruments. So also they had a very strongly developed sense of odor and feeling, and they could sense already from afar when something hostile was coming to them. With their eyes and their will, they restrained the animals, and now and then also the nature spirits. Although this fifth prehistoric period of development lasted for many thousand times, thousands of years, among these human beings there was still not any progress noticeable in their culture, but they continued to live their monotonous nomad life. And therefore, they only were a preliminary manure for the present-day human generation that resembles me in every respect. The color of their rather still densely haired skin was between dark and light grey. Only in the south there were also races without hair. Their outer appearance was very similar with that of the black people, Blackamore's translator of our time. Until Adam, they reproduced and spread in the lowlands and dense forests, but they never settled on the mountains. Chapter 73. The two last periods of development of the earth. During the time of Adam, by which the sixth period begins, the earth needed again to go partly through great changes by fire and water, and during this occasion the described pre-Adam generation, together with their domestic animals, perished almost completely, as well as the many forests and other animals that were in it, which could not be considered as domestic animals. Only a few species of birds survived, as well as the animals in the mountains and in the waters of the earth. The described prehistoric men survived here and there, but only few in number, and they lived with the Adamites until the time of Noah in Asia. However, they regressed slowly because they could not find sufficient food that was suitable for them. But still, in a few regions deep in the south of Africa and on a few greater islands of the vast earth, a few declined descendants of the fifth period can be found. They are, however, still totally wild, although here and there they adopted a somewhat higher civilization from the descendants of Cain. They can be trained for different kinds of tasks, but actually they cannot think anything out of themselves. Some of them are better off, because they proceeded from a mixture with the Cainites and later also Lamachites, but also they are not fit for a higher and deeper spiritual development. This kind of people will still remain there for a long time on the place where they are now and will reproduce, and gradually they will also adopt more civilization from the Adamites. But by that, they still will never become a great people. These are now the Pre-adamites from the fifth preparatory period of development of the Earth. At the beginning of this period, the Earth received also the Moon as companion and regulator of its movement around the Sun and around its own axis. Of course, the Moon did not have immediately the shape as it has now. Before it received that shape, it also had to go through great stormy periods, which, however, did not last as long as those of the Earth. But do not ask me now why for the development of a celestial body such an unimaginable long period of time is needed, because that lies determined in my wisdom and order. If the lord of a vineyard could finish all the work in one moment, then what would he do during the whole year? The intelligent owner of a vineyard divides the work for himself, is busy every year, and his daily activity gives him also always a new joy. Look, that is with me also the case, for I am in the whole of infinity eternally the most active, and therefore also the most happy being. When in springtime the children of a father of a family are seeing the blossom of the cherry, prune, pear and apple trees in the garden, then they rejoice indeed about it, but they would like to see and taste immediately the ripe fruit, instead of only rejoicing at the beautiful blossom. But a wise father says to his still impatient children, "Just be patient, my lovely children. Everything in this world needs its own time according to God's order, and everything ripens in it. So you also be patient. Also these now blossoming trees will be full of ripe and sweet fruits within a few months, and we will then consume them with the Father in heaven. This will then reassure the children." And so, you also can be reassured, even if you still cannot already see everywhere on this earth the completely ripe fruits of my teaching. At the right time, they surely will become ripe, For you surely can imagine that I did not straw the living seed of my word among you for nothing and in vain. However, there still cannot be a complete ripening in one day. Look, when according to my order, already for a tree a certain time is needed, then this is certainly even more needed for an earth according to this same order. For it is not enough that a planet is present in the big space of ether as a very big mass of stone, soil and water, for such a mass would be completely dead, and nothing could grow and live on it. But a planet that must carry and feed living things must first become alive itself. And what is, again, necessary for that is first, just like a big animal, that it will internally, organically be completely developed by means of all kinds of influences and processes. Although in every developing celestial body, just like in an embryo in the body of the mother, everything is already present for the complete, perfect animal organic life form. But at the beginning of the development, everything lies as if chaotically mixed up. Only gradually, order comes, and next an organic living whole. How this order works, I know, because I, as the only one, am installing the fundamental order in everything. However, when you will be completed in spirit, you also will perceive how this order works. From these periods of development, which I have now explained to you as simple and as clearly as possible, you can still conclude something else from it. More precisely, what the actual cause is. Why the prophet Moses divided the creation in 6 days. Thus, those 6 days are the 6 periods that were shown to you, which every created being has to go through. First naturally, and further, like is the case with you human beings, also for the ripening and perfecting of his soul and his spirit. Only after that comes the 7th period of rest, and that is the happiest eternal life. That 7th period is called rest because there is no more compulsion, no more judgment, and no more frightening worries that are pressing on the perfected spirit. But his existence changes eternally into the fullest might of knowledge, insight, and the completely free will. And say now, my dear Markus, how you have understood this explanation of mine. Chapter 74. The development of the soul of the Pre-adamites. Being fully amazed, Markus said, "Lord and Master from eternity, I, and hopefully also all others, have well understood your kind-hearted explanation. But with us, there is still absolutely no complete penetrating understanding, because we lack exactly that which you have pointed out to us. But still, we have received in us such clearness that we in the first place know now what we have to think about the remnants that were found in the depths of the earth, and how they came there at such great depth, namely by the frequent periodical processes of change of the earth, and the following movement to and fro of the sea. And secondly, at least I have understood what the great prophet Moses has pointed out with his veiled 6 days of creation. And this is sufficient for us for the moment. We can now quietly wait until we will learn more by our own spiritual perfection. But I also understand that it is and will also remain a teaching for only a few. There still remains one question, at least with me, and, O Lord and Master, please be so merciful that I still may bother you with this one more time." I said, "You know that I gladly like to listen to you, so you can simply say it." The Roman Markus said, "Lord and Master, although the mentioned Pre-adamites were only gifted with a kind of instinctive intelligence and with only little free will, they also had souls, who as such were not mortal, but could maybe be changeable. Now, what about those souls? Where and what are they now in the 6th period of the earth, and what may happen to them next?" Of course, we could say that this question is reaching too far and is objectionable. But because I still am a Roman who is eager to learn and am not a sleepy Jew, I am asking you to consider also this question as positive and to give me a short answer on this. I said, "Oh yes, why would I not do that? We still have time enough for it. so you can easily listen to me. Look, if already the souls of stones, plants and animals continue to live, and in the state wherein they are free of matter, they can, let us say, already change into human souls by uniting with one another, and can then become true men in the body of a human being. Then the souls of the Pre-adamites will surely also have a continuous life, just like the souls of the human beings of all other worlds in the endless space of creation will continue to live eternally. As souls who are living in the spirit kingdom, they are brought on one or the other big celestial body. That means on a place that corresponds to them spiritually, to a deeper knowledge about God and His power and wisdom. And so they continue to live very happily and can also become more and more happy. But it would be meaningless to tell you also where in this shell globe such a big celestial body exists, because you cannot see such a celestial body with your sense organs. And as long as you are not fully reborn in your spirit, there is no way during your physical life that you could convince yourself that it looks indeed like I would describe it to you. Thus, until that time, you should be satisfied with what I say to you. In the house of my Father are a lot of habitations. When you will be in my kingdom, everything will become clear to you. Do you understand me? Markus said, "Oh yes, Lord and Master, but now I still have something else, because from one thing comes another. Was during the time of the Pre-adamites this earth already that certain life chamber in the heart of the great man of creation?" I said, "Not yet completely in the active reality, but certainly in the destination thereof. During that prehistoric time, another planet was active. However, those people fell into the greatest pride and total God-forsakenness, and those who still believed in a God did not pay attention to him, defied him, and in their blindness they tried to push him, so to speak, from his throne of eternal power. They were looking after him, and evil philosophers said that God lived in the center of their earth. They should dig mine tunnels onto that place and capture him. So they dug terribly deep holes in that earth, by which many of them died. When I sent messengers to them and warned them, they were always strangled, and the people did not improve their life. And see, then I allowed the earth to rip open from the inside into many pieces. Now this happened at the beginning of the 6th period of this earth, and this earth became the life chamber. About where that earth was situated, also in an orbit around this sun, we still look more into it, but you, Lazarus, let them bring new wine. Then we will talk further. Chapter 75. Drinking Wine, the explanation of the destroyed celestial body. Now Lazarus went with a few servants to bring new wine that tasted particularly well. So the cups were filled again. We all drank of it, and our body was strengthened by it. All became very cheerful and praised me because I had placed such good and strengthening things on this earth. But I said, yes, such a wine is a strengthening drink, but only when it is taken with moderation and on time. But for those who are immoderate in drinking wine and get drunk, it is then no more a strengthening drink, but a drink that weakens his whole body. Therefore, always drink this drink with moderation in my name. Then it will also strengthen you for the eternal life of the soul. But in the immoderate usage of this drink, the evil spirit of lewdness and fornication lays hidden. This spirit does not awaken the soul to life, but makes him dead for the true spirit of life from the heavens, and makes the spiritual rebirth of the soul in the spirit from the heavens nearly impossible on this earth. Do also remember that. I said this on that moment not only for the sake of the truth, since I had said that already oftentimes, but because Judas Iscariot took 2 big gulps and was on the point of getting drunk. He surely noticed that and stood up from the table, went outside and visited the little town Bethany. When he was outside, the disciple Andreas said, "I am truly glad that this nasty man has gone away, because for some time he seems more and more suspicious to me, and your teachings and great signs do not impress him. So he does not gain anything, and still he does not want to leave us. If I, O Lord, had your power, he would not be in our company already for a long time." I said, "But he also has a free will, and therefore he can also stay or go, how and when he wants. And you have seen that I even allow the devils, according to their will, to move into the swine. And so I also allow this man, who among you is a devil, to stay or to go. Because as far as I'm concerned, every human being and spirit is completely free. But by his actions, everyone takes also care of his own reward. If one wants to become an angel or a devil, is free to everyone. But let us cease about this, for we still have to discuss many things. At the beginning of the 6th period, we have seen that there was a planet that was destroyed from the inside, and that with Adam, this earth became the life chamber in the great man of creation. I will now show you the condition of that destroyed world, more precisely as it was before, as well as how it looks now. And after that, I will also show you how this earth was related to the great man. That means only spiritually speaking, but not according to the material reality, since such a thing cannot be shown to you with words alone, without a visible image. I will now, by my will, show you the sun with all its planets on a small scale. Then, while seeing this image, my words will soon be easily understood. Now, be all very attentive." When I had said that, a ball with a diameter of a handbreadth came into existence. This one represented the sun, with a size and distance that were proportionally represented as good as possible, although the space of the hall was of course too small to show them completely in their exact mutual proportion. Also, all the other planets with their moons were shown as they existed, when at the beginning of the 6th period, the destroyed planet with its 4 moons was not yet destroyed. I explained to them all the positions of the planets, named their moons, in the Jewish as well as in the Greek language, and they saw the planet in question floating between Mars and Jupiter, and its 4 moons circling around it. As far as its size is concerned, it looked quite similar to Jupiter, except for the fact that it had more continents than Jupiter, and also a higher atmosphere above it, and a greater inclination, and therefore also a more inclined orbit around the Sun. Now, when all of them well understood this, I said further, "Look, this was the order about 4,000 years ago, counted from now. However, then came the destruction of that planet, of which I was talking about to you. How and why this took place, I have already told you, but see now how the planet looks like after the destruction took place." All of them looked at the planet that broke up now into many big pieces. Only the 4 moons remained complete, but because they lost their central celestial body, their order was disrupted, and they separated from each other more and more, also because they received a forceful push by the bursting of the central planet. The pieces of the planet continued to break up in very broad space between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. A great number of smaller fragments disappeared also over the 2 indicated orbits, and some of them fell on Jupiter, some on Mars, and some even on this Earth, on Venus, on Mercury, and also on the Sun. And even the people, who were, as far as their bodies concerned, gigantic in size, were during the bursting of the planet slung in great numbers into free space, as well as the other creatures. Some dried up bodies are still floating around in the wide ether space, others are sitting and lying dead and completely dried up in their houses, which still exist on bigger fragments of the planet. Some of those bodies fell even also on this Earth, where they decomposed already after a few hundred years. This also happened on other planets. During the bursting, the big seas of this planet, together with their inhabitants of all kind, separated themselves also as greater and smaller drops, of which a few had a diameter of many hours of walking. They carry also firm land in themselves, and are also still inhabited by some animals. On the 4 moons, earlier creatures are still living, but only in an already very withered condition. Just like this is also the case on a few very big pieces, but in a still more withered condition. On the smaller fragments, there is, however, no organic life, except that of disintegration and slow decay.